Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevayam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevayam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevayam. Om Aganda Timarandasya Ganajana Shivakaya Chakshur Umilitam Yena Tajma Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Hare Krishna. The following video series is a summary of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam was translated into English by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Also included are His in-depth commentaries known as purports. These purports unpack the often complex and symbolic language of the text, making it understandable to a wider audience. The Srimad Bhagavatam, also known as the Bhagavata Purana, is considered the most important of sacred scriptures. Composed around 5,000 years ago, it is considered the ripened fruit of the tree of Vedic literature and the original commentary on the Vedanta-sutra. The author of Srimad Bhagavatam is Srila Vyasadeva. He is also the compiler of the Vedas, classified as a Purana, a vast genre of ancient stories and knowledge encompassing history, philosophy, and spiritual teachings. Srimad Bhagavatam includes stories of avatars, creation narratives, lives of saints and sages, philosophy discourses, and practical guidance for spiritual life. Divided into 12 cantos with over 18,000 verses covering 10 subject matters. 1. The elemental creation. 2. The secondary creation. 3. The planetary systems. 4. Protection by the Lord. 5. The creative impetus. 6. Manvatars. 7. The science of God. 8. The dissolution. 9. Liberation. And 10. The supreme shelter. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 25, text 143 and 144, Lord Chaitanya, speaking to Prakrisananda Saraswati, tells him, translation, the meaning of the Vedanta-sutra is present in Srimad Bhagavatam. The full purport of the Mahabharata is also there. The commentary of the Brahma Gayatri is also there and fully expanded with all Vedic knowledge. Srimad Bhagavatam is the Supreme Purana. It was compiled by the Supreme Personality of Godhead in His incarnation as Vyasadeva. There are 12 cantos, 335 chapters, and 18,000 verses. Canto 3, chapters 1 through 8. Chapter 1, Questions by Vidura. At the end of Canto 2, Sanaka Rishi inquires from Suta Goswami about Vidura, for Sanaka heard previously about Vidura's having met with Maitreya Muni while on pilgrimage. Canto 3 thus begins with Suta Goswami replying to Sanaka about the meeting and discussion between Vidura and Maitreya Muni. King Dhritarashtra, overwhelmed by illusion, had not stopped his son Duryodhana's deadly plots against the Pandavas. Dhritarashtra then asked advice from Vidura, and Vidura plainly told the king to give up his affection for Duryodhana, who was envious of Lord Krishna. Duryodhana became furious and insulted Vidura, ordering him thrown out of the palace. Vidura thus left the palace in Hastinapur for pilgrimage. After many years on pilgrimage, Vidura met the great devotee and associate of Sri Krishna, Uddhava, on the bank of the Yamuna River. Vidura inquired from Uddhava about Krishna's family members, including Dhritarashtra, and then requested Uddhava to speak the glories of Lord Krishna. A verse from chapter 1 is text 13. Sa esa dosa purusa dvidaste grihan pravishtoyam apatya matya punasti krishnad vimukto gatarish tvajasva saivam kula kausalaya. Translation. You are maintaining offense personified Duryodhana as your infallible son, but he is envious of Lord Krishna, and because you are thus maintaining a non-devotee of Krishna, you are devoid of all auspicious qualities. Relieve yourself of this ill fortune as soon as possible and do good to the whole family. Chapter 2. Remembrance of Lord Krishna. Uddhava became ecstatic to hear Vidura's questions, for he had been a great devotee of the Lord since his childhood. Uddhava freely and briefly mentions the disappearance of the Lord and the Yadu dynasty from this earth, as well as Krishna's glorious appearance. While feeling separation, Uddhava began remembering the Lord's inconceivable activities while on this earth, including his birth and ending with his lifting Govardhan Hill and his dancing with the gopis of Braj. A verse from chapter 2, text 10. Devasya mayaya shrishta ye chanyad asarasrita brahmyate dirnatad vakyair atmanya tatamohara. Translation. Under no circumstances can the words of persons bewildered by the illusion energy of the Lord deviate the intelligence of those who are completely surrendered souls. Chapter 3. The Lord's pastimes out of Vrindavan. The third chapter describes briefly the pastimes of Krishna in Mathura and Dwarka, such as killing of Kamsa, kidnapping Rukmini, taking the Parijata tree from heaven, and the destruction of the Yadu dynasty is also described in brief. These pastimes are elaborately described in the 10th canto. A verse from chapter 3 is text 19. Bhagavan api visvatma loka veda pathanuga kamasi se vedarvatyam astakta sakyam astita. Translation. Simultaneously, the personhood of Godhead enjoyed life in the city of Dwarka, strictly in conformity with the Vedic customs of society. He was situated in detachment and knowledge as enunciated by the Sankhya system of philosophy. Chapter 4. Vidura approaches Maitreya. Uddhava continues to explain the events leading to the annihilation of the Yadu dynasty, and then explained his meeting with the Lord just prior to his departure from this world. Uddhava followed the Lord after the Lord left Dwarka, due to his intense feelings of separation. He later met the Lord as he saw the Lord sitting beneath a tree by the bank of the Sarasvati River. Maitreya Muni, by his good fortune, arrived, and as the Lord spoke to Uddhava, Maitreya listened. Vidura, after hearing from Uddhava about the appearance and disappearance of Lord Krishna from this world, proceeded to Hardwar along the Ganges to meet Maitreya Muni. A verse from chapter 4 is text 7. Shamavadatam virajam prasantaruna lochanam dorbish chatur virviditam pita kalsambarena cha. Translation. The Lord's body is blackish, but is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge, and very, very beautiful. His eyes are always peaceful, and they are reddish like the rising morning sun. I could immediately recognize him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead by his 4 hands, different symbolic representations, and the yellow silk garments. Chapter 5. Vidura's talks with Maitreya. Vidura met Maitreya and inquired from him about the cause of real happiness, and requested Maitreya to instruct him how to become sufficiently purified so that the Lord would instruct him from within. Vidura then inquired about how the Lord incarnates and how he creates and maintains both the material world and the varieties of living entities. Vidura next requested Maitreya to answer his questions in such a way that all his words are related to Krishna. He then glorifies the power of Krishna Katha and its medicinal effect on those who hear it, and again requests Maitreya to speak about the essence of all topics about Krishna. A verse from chapter 5, text 23. Bhagavan eka asedam agra atma manam vibhu atme chandu gatvatma nana matyupalaksana. Translation. The personality of Godhead, the master of all living entities, exists prior to the creation as one without a second. It is by His will only that creation is made possible. And again, everything merges in Him. The Supreme Self is symptomized by different names. Chapter 6, Creation of the Universal Form. The 6th chapter describes how, when the Paramatma enters, the universal form appears along with the elements. The Adibhuta, Adiyatma, and Adidaiva aspects in his body are described. When the 23 principal elements are set into action, the Virat Rupa, the universal form of the Lord, came into existence. The Lord Himself then entered into the elements, and they transformed into the gigantic form in which rest all the planetary systems and movable and immovable creations. The Virat Rupa, known as Hiranyamaya, along with the living entities, lived on the water of the universe for 1,000 years. Maitreya then glorified the inconceivable Lord who possesses unlimited power. He then offered the Lord his respectful obeisances. A verse from chapter 6, text 37. Ekanta labham vakaso nupusam suslokamale gunavaram aham shrutescha vidvadbe upakritayam katasudhayam upasam prayogam. Translation. The highest perfectional gain of humanity is to engage in discussions of the activities and glories of the pious actor. Such activities are so nicely arranged in writing by the great learned sages that the actual purpose of the ear is served just by being near them. Chapter 7, Further Inquiries by Vidura. Vidura further inquired from Maitreya about the Lord's dealings both within and independent from the modes of nature. He also inquired how a soul who is non-material can be engaged in essence. He then asked how the living entity can possibly be miserable, considering he has the Lord as supersoul within his heart. Maitreya explains that one's illusionary misconception of his identity and the consequent material miseries can be gradually diminished by the Supreme Personality of Godhead's mercy and detached devotional service, chanting and hearing about the Lord. A verse from chapter 7, text 5. Desata kalato yosva avastata fato natyata avilupta valbodhatma sayujshita jajai katam. Translation. The pure soul is pure consciousness and is never out of consciousness, either due to circumstances, time, situation, dreams, or other causes. How then does he become engaged in essence? Chapter 8, Manifestations of Brahma from Vishnu. Maitreya Muni began to reply, saying that he would now speak the Bhagavata Purana. Maitreya Muni had heard the Bhagavatam from his spiritual master, Parasara Muni, who had heard it from Sankayanana Muni, who had heard it directly from the 4 Kumaras. Maitreya began narrating how Garbhodaksayi Vishnu lay upon Ananta on the universal waters until the time was proper for creation. By the power of time, from his navel came an effulgent stem of a lotus flower. Lord Brahma appears from that lotus flower. Lord Brahma could not understand the creation, the lotus flower, or himself even after entering the water to the stem of the lotus. He then focused his mind on the Supreme Lord. After 100 years of meditation, he achieved sufficient knowledge and a sufficient amount of the Lord's mercy to see within himself the beautiful, ornamented Lord on Anantasesh. Brahma, surcharged with passion, became inclined to create. He then offered prayers to the Lord for the ability to do so. A verse from chapter 8 is text 8. Sankhayana paramahamsa muktyo vivaksamano bhagavad vibhuti jagat sosmat gurave nivitaya parasarayata brihaspatescha. Translation. The great sage Sankhayana was chief amongst the transcendentalists, and he was describing the glories of the Lord in terms of Srimad Bhagavatam And so it happened that both my spiritual master, Parasara, and Brihaspati heard them.
Krishna, Hare Krishna.